Everybody knows things are bad. We know.
Hey, my name's Sam. I'm the singer and songwriter for Dead Fucking Serious ever since we started in 2006. As for COVID, man, it's been a little rough on us. I could tell you that I was working in a job that became essential during all this, and for about 3 months I was out there working with the public, and it was just very, very stressful. I'm a germaphobe, and it was just a lot of anxiety, and I quit that job. Now I'm working from home right here, and it's great. Calms my nerves quite a bit. I know that Kellen, our drummer, he was working at a movie theater, which closed, obviously, during all this, and his wife is working at a grocery store, and so she has been exposed to the public a bit too. So, it's stressful, and we're just being very careful. We haven't gotten together. We haven't seen each other since before all this. So, makes it a little bit hard to write material, but, we're getting by. The name of the band actually came before there was a band. So I had the idea in spring or early summer of 2006 that I really wanted to play some straight up fast hardcore punk again. And that name just popped into my head, and actually it wasn't until way later that I even put it together that it's similar to Dead Fucking Last. It was a band, well, it still is a band, been around a long time, but I thought it just sounded so right. And I wrote the first song. It was called The Anthem, and in the chorus I said, and I'm dead fucking serious, with this big group shout. And it was a straight edge song, and that's a big part of who I am. I don't really put it in the music a lot these days, but it's definitely a huge part of my life, coming from a family of addicts and recovered abusers, that I saw things in a much different light, and so that's what the song was about, and the name of the band is definitely directly linked to that. Since then, it's sort of taken on other meanings, and just that we're very intense, and we don't, there's a time where we joked around a little bit, and my other projects can have more of a sense of humor, and with this we wanted to be very stripped down, very to the point, always have a message, and just be about like some real life shit, some primal energy, emotional shit. So that's DFS. Well, the band started with myself. I just wrote a bunch of songs. I didn't have a band. And after I had the songs, then I asked some friends if they would play. It was actually, I think underneath this, my old band, This Day's End. Happened to be wearing that from yesterday. Me and the bass player, Chris, we were the first ones in. And I asked a friend of mine, Ben Polanski, if he would play guitar. Phenomenally talented player. Actually, I'm in a podcast with him about Batman. It's called the Bat Fanatic Podcast. And so yeah, still good friends with everybody. We had a drummer for a few months named Darren, and he's a guy I went to high school with back in the day, middle school, a good friend when we were kids. And then he joined the military and moved away, and so just like 3 months later, Kellen Holte, our current drummer, joined the band. And we've had many lineup changes since 2006, but generally it's Kellen and I that write all the songs and do everything together. So Kellen and I are the band, and then we bring in somebody to tour with us to play bass. But generally on the records or any other situation, for the most part, it's just me and Kellen. I appreciate that you're a fan of the album. Peril is, I've been making music a very long time, and as far as like actually releasing music, in September this will be 20 years since my very first actual studio recording in my middle school band. And so, I've been doing a lot, and I have a home studio, so I produce a lot of records, but Peril is just something I'm very, very proud of. It's something that, you know, with our last album, Squalor, we had reunited the band and put in a few years of trying to write and you know, really make something we were proud of, because in all these years we didn't have a full-length album that was just really good through and through. And when we finished it, we were like, wow, it felt so accomplished, and we didn't think that we'd be able to top that. But really, as soon as we hit the road to support Squalor, we started writing. You know, we felt so charged by just the response to the music and getting out there on stage and playing it again, and it felt amazing. And so, I mean, right away, I mean, weeks after the album was released, we had new songs already. So in early 2017, that's the earliest demos. We actually just dropped an EP called the Outtakes EP that has a couple of those recordings from early 2017. And as we went on and more stuff was happening in the world, that first record, Squalor, was a lot about mourning and grief and depression, and, you know, there's some suicidal thoughts, and it was just very, like, introverted, personal content. But there was a lot going on in the world, you know, with, our first single from Squalor was called Pulse, and it was about the Pulse nightclub shooting in Florida. But so much more of that stuff was happening over and over, and then there was the March for Our Lives that all those kids from Florida had put together, and it was just so inspiring. And so I wrote the song Never Again, kind of using their slogan, their hashtag. And Never Again really was, I think, the jump off for Peril. And I came up with the title around that time, Peril. I thought it was just so relevant to the way a lot of us felt, just very powerless. And, you know, with that song Never Again, I tried to write from the perspective of, you know, the victims and the fear and just the demoralization that they must have experienced. And to have them come out so resilient, I had to put that in the end of the song. You know, Emma Gonzalez gave that amazing speech on the press conference where, you know, she said, "We call BS." And so in that song, put in the big group shout, you know, "We call bullshit." And, you know, that was just a huge jump off. And from there, we ended up making a more political record, more about the times that we live in and everything going on. So that was sort of the genesis of Peril in a nutshell. And then the other parts are like, the first record was mastered at the Blasting Room by Jason Livermore. This one, I had a little more money behind it, and so I could actually have them mix it and master it. And so Jason did a phenomenal job. It sounds much, much better. It elevated everything we did. And then we also worked with Winston Smith again on the album art, who just a legendary collage artist, punk rock artist from the Bay Area. You know, I first knew from my first punk CD, Green Day, Insomniac. You know, he did that album cover, and, you know, of course, got into the Dead Kennedys and Jello Biafra, and George Carlin's #1 of my major influences. And so having Winston be such a part of my record collection, it was great to work with him on Squalor. But with this one, it was a very more specific direction, and we wanted to bring this whole idea of, you know, the school shootings and just the chaos that's going on. And he was by far the perfect person to do that. It's my favorite album cover ever in anything I've ever done. So that was a real treat. The difference between Peril and Squalor, I mean, I sort of touched on it. I think of Squalor as a very specific kind of small world, personal story. You know, again, a lot about just being depressed and down and, you know, losing hope, I think is a big part of it. And, you know, you lose loved ones, you lose friendships, and, you know, it was just a lot of bad stuff going on. But with the release of Squalor, it really made us feel great and inspired again. And I was able to take a step back from myself and look at what was going on, or what was going on around me, and to my neighbors and my community and my country. And so there's definitely a lot more of that in Peril. I still want to put in personal stories, like the song Brian is about a young punk rocker from Texas who was run over and murdered when I was about high school age. And I remember reading his story back in the day, and they recently made a film about it called Bomb City. And I watched it, I was just instantly inspired to write that song, again, from the perspective of the victim and someone who just unnecessarily suffered, some real brutality. And so even when the record is personal, it still ties into the overall themes. I don't want to just like lash out at the world and make these really vague, generic statements, but there's a way to share our specific stories that will help to, like Parkland in Never Again, again, that is a specific personal story, but it touches on a broader issue. So that's kind of the difference between the two records, in my opinion.
Take the only thing that I ever cared about, tie it up again, shut its fucking mouth. You stripped away everything in my social fucking parasite, right to the game.
The Apparel Tour was pretty fun. I was really hoping to do more, but we found out right as we were recording and we were starting to book the tour that Kellen's wife was pregnant and they were expecting a child. And so we kind of moved up the tour, so it happened sooner before she got to the point where she needed a lot of help, in the pregnancy. And then we also shortened it. And so we couldn't get to a lot of the places we wanted to, but we still had a really good time out there. And, we had our friend Eric play on the record. He played the bass on the record because we wanted to record live. That was also, I guess I should have mentioned, a huge difference between the records is that this one we recorded, like 4 or 5 songs at a time without stopping like we do at shows. So, just bam, 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 stop, hit recording, bam, 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 3 or 4 more. And so that was a big part of it, and we couldn't do it as a 2-piece, so we brought in my really old friend Eric to play those parts. But on the tour, we got Phil, who's the bass player from Streetlight Cardiacs, great friends of ours from Springfield, Oregon, just across town, and everything just worked out perfectly that he was able to quit his job, go on tour, and then we dropped him off in the middle of the night, and he went to start his new job the next morning. So it couldn't have worked out better. But yeah, we had a great time out there, and the reception to the album has just been phenomenal. I only wish we had had more of a chance to play shows, but it did kind of work out because we had agreed with the baby that we would take off the year of 2020 and not be playing shows, and then, well, lo and behold, nobody's playing shows. So as much as it all sucks, it didn't really hurt the band too much because we already had that going on. New projects, yes. I do have some new stuff up the sleeve. In March, when all this stuff happened with the pandemic, I started writing this kind of epic song, because our songs are usually like, 45 seconds to like a minute 15, something like that. We don't really push much longer than that. It's I think our record was like 18 songs in 18 minutes or something very close to that. So that's kind of our style, but I just had so much to get off my chest when I was working as an essential worker, and so stressful, and with all the information coming at us so quickly and it all being so new and nobody really had the answers, it's very scary. And so I wrote this song and I called it Panicdote, and it's like a 5-minute DFS song. It's sort of like a mini Decline, you know, for us. It kind of applies the way that we'd weave medleys together for our shows, you know, song to song to song. But in doing so, it still revisits earlier parts of the song. And so it is one continuous piece of music. But yeah, I'm really happy with that. It's a monster track. We just have not been able to get in the same room with everything going on. You know, this is a very small place here that we record and rehearse. And so there's not really, in our opinion, a safe way to do it. But yeah, we've definitely got some stuff up the sleeve. And again, you can check out the Outtakes EP right now on take92.com. It'll take you to the Bandcamp page. And then I started writing another one just last night. So yeah, we got some stuff going. It's funny that you would call us a political band, because I remember when Squalor came out, and like I said, that whole record is so personal to me, and yet I think it was Punk News or somebody called us a political band, and I was like, well, that's weird. And then I thought, oh, well, our first single was Pulse, about the nightclub shooting, and our second single was called Pacified and about consumerism. I was like, oh, I guess we keep picking as singles these more topical songs just by accident, but obviously we fell into that with Peril. You know, I get very stressed. It brings me a lot of anxiety. I'm a person who doesn't read the news for a long time, you know, and then I'll be able to dive back in and catch up on things. It's just been overwhelming ever since, you know, 45 took office, and you know, we've been seeing the warning signs from the campaign in 2016, and the fact that people are still buying it right now is just, you know, it just makes you sad. It's really disappointing. And so I have a fear that, you know, as much as we want things to get back to normal, and we want to look forward to 2021. Oh, I can't wait till this year is over. Can't wait till 2020 is behind us. But I'm worried that he's not going to leave office one way or another, and that 2021 could be a hell of a lot worse. So I'm hoping that you can play back this interview down the road, and you're like, oh, glad he was wrong about that. Oh, just being paranoid. But that's definitely a concern, and I think a valid concern right now. Even in that new song that I wrote in March, I mean, that's 5 months ago I wrote, it's called Panecdote. I had a line in there where I said, you know, because as much as I stay home, my parents want me to come to dinner, nope. I'll come say hi in the backyard at a distance. You know, I'm not trying to be irresponsible here. But I also know that given the person in control, it's very dangerous to be having all these cities on lockdown. And we've already seen, like with the feds coming out to Portland, I mean, that's 100 miles from my house. That's not far at all. A lot of our friends live very close to everything that's happening in Portland. A lot of my friends live in Minneapolis too, where the police are getting out of control and the military's coming in. And, I mean, this shit's pretty fucking crazy. And so there's a concern that even though it's necessary to shut things down because people are stupid and they want to just go out and live their lives, and you know, if I don't see it, it's not happening to me. It's like racism. You know, the pandemic is racism because, oh well, if I haven't seen it with my own two eyes, well, it can't be real. Oh, that's not as bad as they're making it out to be, right? And so with a person like Trump in charge, what you run the risk of is now we've set a precedent, and where is he going to take this afterward? So that is my concern, and it's hard to say what's going to happen next. Oh, but again, the lyric in Panecdote was delayed the election, now he wouldn't leave. And that was 5 months ago, and he mentioned that publicly just last week. So again, please let me be wrong about all this shit, but I think 2021 is going to be maybe even worse. All right, that's about it. I appreciate you guys who have checked out the band. Please listen to Peril. We think it's fucking awesome. I mean, it's probably my favorite thing I've ever worked on, so I really think you guys will like it. If you like hardcore, skate punk, it's got kind of elements of all that wrapped into one. We also dropped the Outtakes EP. If you want to check out some of the B-sides that we cut during rehearsals that are, not as political, you can check that out. Also, I've got the Take 92 podcast that I host, so if you want to hear me interviewing great punk musicians, sick of it all, Death by Stereo, shit like that, check out the Take 92 podcast. That's going on right now as well. So hopefully we'll be back with new music in 2021.
If that's the way it's supposed to be, I want you to get mad.